Welcome to the Women Leaders Association Daily Member Podcast, where we believe we go further, faster, and have more fun when we go together. I'm your host, Julianne Kirkland. And in each Daily Member Podcast, we will pick out a great speaker from one of our meetings that we thought you would enjoy. You can access hundreds of recent speakers, book summaries, great articles, and more at no additional charge through your membership portal. If you would like to get involved in a Women Leaders Association mastermind group or find a networking group near you, or if you just need access to the membership portal, simply go to womenleaderspodcast.com to be connected. Now let's tune in for this incredible message.
My name is Sara DeGroot, and I am very excited to be here. I think all of the talk has been amazing today. There have been a lot of good input, good education, and I agree with everything everyone said. The networking especially, it was my New Year's resolution to do better at networking. As a scientist, it's not easy. It doesn't come easily to me. So very exciting to be here. So thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen just to make sure that everybody can see it appropriately. Are you able to see it in presentation mode?
Yes, it looks fantastic.
Excellent. Thank you. So again, thank you. My name is Sara DeGroot. I am the Vice President of Clinical Lab Operations globally for ACM. ACM is a wholly owned subsidiary of Rochester Regional Health. We focus mainly on central laboratory testing or diagnostic type testing for clinical trials across the globe. We've been doing this for approximately 26 years, but have been in business over 47. We started out in the medical diagnostics testing and moved into clinical trials over time. I'm also on the board for Trauma Help for Women, which is a new and upcoming organization that is helping women across the country that have been exposed to trauma. So I wanted to take the opportunity today, though, to talk to you about a concept that isn't necessarily novel, but it is extremely important. It's called extreme ownership. Now, this particular term has gotten a lot of traction lately because of a book that was published over the last few years, written by Jocko Wilkins and Leif Babin. Now, this is it's written by military. My ex-CEO was military, and he brought this to the executive leadership team. He was very excited because he loved the stories. Now, these stories aren't for everybody, but these principles are found in multiple books. You will be able to find these books in multiple, find these principles in multiple types of books and products. But extreme ownership is a really good one if anybody is interested in hearing some wartime stories and seeing how the principles from the lesson learned get actually put into action in business. So when we go through this extreme ownership, I've taken many of the principles out of the book, but not all of them. I wanted to focus on a few that I thought were really important, and that might actually help everyone in business. This is business agnostic. These principles can be used anywhere by anyone. So, and it really will, if you can master them, it really will make you successful. We are going to talk about what the definition of extreme ownership is. What does that mean? That there's no bad teams, only bad leaders. It's not necessarily that the leaders are bad, but they just might not be on the right bus. We want to be sure that our leaders and ourselves are believing in the task, the goal, the strategy, whatever it is at hand. We'll go into a little more detail around that. We want to talk about checking your ego. So there's been some talk today around humility and around emotional intelligence and really understanding where you are in your career and where others are and how you can help each other becomes extremely important. And to simplify, we're going to talk about how do you make sure that everyone understands what you're saying, because you can, as a leader, think everyone understands what the goal of the organization is. But if you were to go and ask the questions face to face, you probably would find out quite a few of them really don't understand what the strategy is or how you're planning on getting there. Prioritize and execute. We're going to talk a little bit about being overwhelmed, what happens when you have multiple issues coming to you at once. And then the concept of everybody leads. In the book, they called it decentralized command, but it's really about, are you empowering your people to be able to make some decisions that you're not having to be involved in every single issue and every single meeting that comes up? It's just not humanly possible as a leader to do that. So you have to be sure that the people you work with understand what you need from them, that it's very clear, and then you can be more successful. So the first thing I just wanted to take a few minutes to talk about was the definition. And I think emotional intelligence just come into this a lot, because you need to understand who you are and what you're doing. No complaining about any issue that you face, no excuses, and no placing blame. As leaders, we really need to solve problems that others are having trouble solving. We need to be able to leverage those relationships, processes, and systems, because if you're not leveraging those, you're losing out on getting some really good ideas. There's a lot of ideas that come from all levels of the organization and all levels of experience. Sometimes even the newest to the organization or to that industry will have the best ideas because they're not already tainted by a lifetime of different experiences. We also need to believe that our team is greater than an individual. There is no one individual that's more important than the team. An organization very rarely stems around one individual. Well, people have to work together and have to be able to believe in working together in order to be able to succeed well. And then 100% dedication to ownership. You just have to own everything, even the mistakes. They're yours as the leader. They're your mistakes. Doesn't matter who made them, because something happened along the way in order for that mistake to happen. And there can be a lot of different reasons for the mistake. As a very quality-driven person and doing a lot of root cause analysis, very rarely can we point to one person as the reason the mistake happened. There's usually a host of reasons around it that determine the cause. So these are simple, right? Simple concepts. They're really not difficult to understand, but they're very difficult to execute, because you have to stop. You have to stop when you start feeling like complaining. You have to stop when your immediate instinct is to blame another department, another company, another person. You have to stop and really assess the situation. That is a very difficult thing to do if it's not already part of your nature. But this is what it means to be successful. It means to take ownership, and taking ownership of mistakes is hard. It's very hard when you don't think they're yours. But if you don't have a team, there's no need for a leader. So you have to be able to understand that your team needs you to a level that makes you need to own everything that's going on. So we're going to start there. We're going to start with the baseline. The baseline is the definition of extreme ownership. Owning it to the possibility of being fired or losing your business or losing a client, but truly owning it. And what that'll get you, you will see as we go through these principles. So the first principle that I wanted to talk about is that there are no bad teams. There's only bad leaders. And the reason we want to say that is because it is important that we learn from others' mistakes, and we absolutely are able to move forward with understanding those mistakes and being sure that we can actually not have to make those again. We do not want to make the mistakes that our predecessors have made. The whole point is to be able to learn from them. But what do you do in order to do that? Good leaders plan through good communication and buy-in. It's triad here because you can't really do any one of these things alone. You have to do them together. And what this does is it ensures the plan is sound and that all involved can get behind and support the plan, the task, the strategy, the goal, whatever it is that you are trying to get through to people, to your team. You need to have the assurance that everyone has clear instructions and understands the guidelines. So in order to do that, you want to explain the goal. What are we trying to get to? What's the end result? You want to describe the tasks. What are the tasks that have to happen? Now, every team does have underperformers. It doesn't make it a bad team. If you have an underperformer, what you want to do is you want to train and mentor. If that doesn't work, then you have to just decide, is that the right seat on the bus or is the person in the right bus? The bus being the organization and the seat being the place in which they're working, the position they're holding. You need to be sure that you've got the right team together. And then when you do, plan appropriately, plan with buy-in from the team, and then communicate exactly what has to happen. You're going to be able to do that in a manner that allows you to have confidence that everything's going to get done the way it needs to. So how would you tell a bad leader from a good leader? It's really hard to identify immediate reasons why a team is failing. But most of the time, it's going to be the leader. So in the book, there's a great example of them having a competition with two teams. What they do, they have one team that's winning every single time and one team that's losing every single time. Can't always do this in business, but they switch the leaders. They're trying to prove the point that there are not bad teams, just bad leaders. So one leader was doing exactly as we're shown here. They're planning, they're getting buy-in from the team, they're communicating. That winning team, after they switched and had the bad leader who wasn't communicating well, who was yelling at his team, who was trying to push and intimidate, that was the team that was failing. They didn't see it as clearly until they switched them. And when they switched them, the team that was coming in first didn't fail completely because that team already had some really good habits built, but they didn't come in first anymore. And that team that came in last actually came in first. So it was a really interesting way in order to see that the team itself wanted to do well. They really wanted to do better. And now that they had a leader that was listening to them and was helping them and was guiding them appropriately, they won. So it's looking around at your teams and understanding from the ones that are failing, do a little dissection. What's going on and how is the leader leading? And is there more that needs to be done in order for that team to assure that they can be successful? So what's next? We want to believe. Believe is really more important than you would first think, because believe is just a general term. We believe in ourselves, we believe in our organization. Of course we do. No, we wouldn't be here if we didn't. But you must believe 100% of whatever you are trying to get your team to participate in. You can never waver. If you waver, it will be felt by your team. And if it's felt by your team, they will start to show doubt. If you show doubt, they will doubt. And what does a team do? A team actually emulates what they see from their leader. We as leaders are past the management stage. We're not managing. We shouldn't be managing. Managing is managing day to day. We're leading, which means we're influencers, which means people emulate us. They look at us, they look how we react to a situation, they look how we react to our goals, they look how we react to messages from the executive team, and they will emulate what you do. So you want to be sure that you are showing your team nothing but 100% commitment and belief in what you're doing. It's very important also that we understand as leaders What is the goal that we're trying to accomplish? Part of the lack of belief or doubt that comes from not understanding completely what the goal is or how to get there. So there's multiple avenues. You've got a task, and a task is usually done to get to a goal, and multiple goals usually come together to get to a strategy. We want to be sure that we are understanding every step of the way so that we can communicate well with our teams. The goals are just the steps to fulfill that strategy. So you want to be sure that the frontline staff always have a clear understanding. Because I had mentioned earlier that the frontline staff actually never have a clear understanding of the strategic picture, not as much as senior leadership think. So if you think everyone 100% understands and is bought into the strategic picture of the organization and how you're going to get there, I promise you there are people that just do not understand it. And explaining what you're trying to do isn't as good as why, because staff need to know why you're actually taking certain steps and what that's going to do for you. What actions do they take? What results do we expect? And how does that lead into the bigger picture? Cascading goals is common. Many organizations do that. They'll have a strategic goal for the year, and then they'll cascade to their managers, and then their managers will cascade the task to their team. What tends to get lost in translation are the details around why are you doing these particular tasks to meet this particular goal. And that's something that even the managers, the junior managers, they may miss it too. And if they miss it, they can't explain it to their staff. So it becomes vital that everyone in the organization, top down, understands the details around the mission or the strategic goal of the organization, and then why we're having them do these tasks to get there. What does it feed into? What does it buy them? What does it get them as an organization, as a staff member? We want to be sure that we're fulfilling this in the best way possible. We'll talk a little bit more as we continue to go on these details and how the details are important. But everyone wants to succeed. They want to do well at their job. People don't usually show up to say, you know what, I think I'm going to fail today. I think I want to not do a very good job. They want to, but they may not understand how to, and that does get in the way. The how to and the confidence or the lack thereof will get in the way. So we want to be sure that we believe and we educate and communicate. So then how does ego come into this? Check the ego, leave the ego at the door. And when I rolled this out to my staff as well, my managers, and when I rolled it out to them, their first answer when I was asking them about ego was, well, I came in and worked from the ground up. So I knew when I came in, I didn't know everything. So I don't have an ego. And I was like, well, that's not necessarily the only definition of ego, thinking that you know more than everybody else. That is just a piece of it. The rest of it is when you're wrong. What do you do? What do you do when you're wrong? Do you try to hide it? Do you try to, just not say anything about it so you don't have to admit it? Do you, or do you openly just say, yeah, you know what? I was wrong, or I made a mistake. Making a mistake is important. It's important because it's a learning opportunity. A lot of people look at mistakes as, I'm going to look bad. I'm going to look bad and no one's going to think I can do my job if they know I made the mistake. And that's not true. That is an opportunity for you to bring that forward and work with your team to say, yeah, you know what? I'm owning this mistake. I made this mistake. And you know what? I would like for all of us to get together and figure out what's the best way to move forward that nobody has to make this mistake again. This never has to happen again in the organization. If we can come together and figure out why it happened, what was missed, and what can be put in place to make sure. Because if you have the ego, then you're unable to do that. You're unable to really work with your team constructively and help them learn from you. It clouds and disrupts your thought pattern and your thinking. You can't take advice because you know better, right? And then constructive criticism, it really makes it difficult to take that constructive criticism and be able to learn and grow. And that's another aspect of where emotional intelligence comes into this. Being able to open yourself up to criticism and being able to talk openly about mistakes, it really does take a lot of emotional intelligence to be able to step back and say, what could I have done differently? What could I do to help the situation? Because even if it isn't directly your fault or directly your team's fault, the question around what can I do differently still becomes extremely important. Because I tell my team often that you cannot change other people, but you can change yourself. So looking at yourself in a different way becomes very important in order to be successful and move forward. We have admitting mistakes, taking complete ownership, again, mistakes or you're wrong, and then developing a plan when you do have mistakes. Develop that plan and work to overcome and challenge the status quo. Just because it's done the same way doesn't mean it needs to. Can you make it better in order to be sure that that mistake doesn't happen again? And I think that's one area in which people sometimes struggle. They struggle with being able to take the status quo. And I think one of the questions earlier was about that. What if everybody says all the time, this is the way we've always done it? Well, one of our values at our company is challenge the status quo. We want everyone to challenge us as executives. We want to know, what do you think we should do differently? What do you think could help the organization move forward? We want to hear from you. We can't always do what everybody suggests, but it's important to hear them. Important to hear them and then follow up. Follow up is one of the most important things you can do in order to ensure your team knows you're listening. And issues are never about one person. They're never about what is it that one person did it wrong. I mean, there's always going to be a severely underperforming employee somewhere. And in that case, you're going to have to, as a leader, look at, did you train them properly? Have you monitored them? Have you coached and developed them? And again, as I said earlier, if you have, and the answer is this person is just not working out, then maybe they're in the wrong place. But if an issue is occurring, it's usually bigger than that. It's the process, or it's the leader, it's the communication, it's the inability to detail out the tasks. There's a lot of different things that could happen. Leading with extreme ownership means operating with a very high degree of humility. You have to be able to understand people around you may know more than you. One of my goals in hiring the scientists that work for me is that they all are smarter than me. I want people around me that know more than me in any aspect, in the science that they run, the tests that we run, the processes with our clients. It's very important that we have some really good people, because one person can't do it alone. It's never about an individual. And if we get complacent and think that we've got it and nothing can go wrong, then our competitors are going to sweep in, because they're going to be ready to exploit our weaknesses as soon as we make a mistake, as soon as we lose a client, as soon as we do something that doesn't show our strength and our knowledge. And a lot of that is around teamwork. I've been talking about that off and on now, but it means that we work together at all levels of the organization, in all departments. Divisions arise with any team when there's multiple departments or teams within teams. Each of them focus on their own tasks. They get kind of tunnel vision, and they're really looking at what they need to do. They're not looking at what they need from another department or what another department might need from you. if they start to compete against one another or blame one another or have animosity because one team needs something from someone else and the other team needs something else, and they're both blaming each other for not being on time or for making a mistake, any of that starts to happen, you'll have dissension, and then the teams aren't working together because your organization, most organizations, my organization, is not one whole organization. It is a conglomerate of different departments that rely on each other and work with each other and serve one another. And I really need those teams to work together well and to not blame each other, to not take each other for granted, and understand that we're really only going to be successful as a whole if we're successful in each part. So it's something that I would think about in your organization. Is there enemies within your own walls? Are you hindering your own success? Are you possibly hurting your own business and inability to grow just because you have some enemies within your own walls? It's very possible. So understanding that you're checking your ego, that you're working together, that you're team building, and that you're trusting each other becomes extremely important in extreme ownership. And again, we do this as leaders, as influencers, by showing our teams how it's done. It's not always what you say, but it's how you act. And when you are saying something as far as the task at hand or the plan, it's very important that you simplify. You have to make things simple, clear, and concise. I think the last thing I saw around attention span of a student was around 5 minutes. That's about you get their full attention for 5 minutes. After that, the mind starts going. You might be half in, half out. It's the same with employees. Sitting there and listening to me talk for 45 minutes, you're probably going to get some good bits and pieces, but you may not be able to get the whole. So that's always why it's always good to go back and reread and look at. But it is very difficult. So you need to make things simple. Just make it easy to understand. When you're cascading the goals, you want each individual to know this is the task you have. And by completing this task, you're helping us hit this goal. And when we complete this goal, it'll be a piece of our strategic picture of where we're going as a company. If plans and goals are too complicated, no, they won't understand them. And if they don't understand them, they can't do what they need to do to be successful. And one of the examples that they give in this book was really interesting, was about how do you, when you're rolling out a new plan, say, for instance, it's an incentive plan, and you have a complicated algorithm based on if my staff do this many samples over this much time in this way, under this type of guideline and this quality aspect, then they'll get this type of bonus. But you'll also get a piece of it. If you only get several of those things right, you'll get a piece of the bonus, a percentage of the bonus. But if not, then you won't get a bonus, or you'll get something subtracted from the percentage of the bonus that you are getting. I'm getting confused just saying it. What happens then is nobody knows what to do. They don't really know what to do in order to get that bonus. At the end of the month, maybe they get one, maybe they don't. But in the end, they're not sure why. Well, then not everyone's taking advantage of that particular incentive program or bonus program, whatever it might be. But this holds true for any goal you have. If they don't understand what to do and how it leads into that goal, then they're not going to be able to accomplish the task. So it becomes extremely important that you are very clear and very precise, bullet points, simplicity, but thorough, because you want to make sure you're not skipping any important steps. So simple, clear, and concise. Keep that in the back of your mind. Some people like KISS, keep it simple, stupid. Whatever the acronym is that you like to use it. Use it. Whatever helps you understand that writing paragraphs and paragraphs and sending them out in emails, that does not work. People will read the first few sentences and then get the gist and not read the rest, and they might miss a critical piece. So you want to be sure that when you're giving direction or you're giving information, that you're being very concise and to the point, and communicate often, because you do need to tell people in different ways and different times in order for them to get it. They call it mirroring when you ask people to say things back. So if you're doing a personal communication, ask them, just read back to me what I just said, or say back to me what I just said, just so I understand that you understand. Because if you're not sure they understand, or if there's any question, more than likely, they're not even going to ask. So it's our jobs as leaders to be sure that there's no questions. We have to anticipate those questions and be sure that we're moving forward with the right information at the right time. So once they have the information and they know what to do, what happens when the problems come? Problems coming at you right and left, very hard as a leader to really stop and say, okay, what's important? I have a leader previously who very good with the staff. He really wanted to do a good job, but when problems came, and this department just happened to have problems, but when problems came, it was like a deer in the headlights. He couldn't do any of that because he didn't know what to do first. So it's understanding and communicating when you don't know what to do. So prioritizing and execute is a way in which you can understand what has to be done now. Make sure that you make a detailed plan around it. Make sure you get a team around you to do it. And then making that call and moving it forward so that you can get to that next priority. Even the most competent of leaders can be overwhelmed when they have multiple problems staring them down. You have to stay ahead of the real issues. You really do. You use contingency planning. Don't ever think you don't need contingency planning. It doesn't matter how simple it is. It can go wrong. If it can go wrong, it will go wrong. So you want to be sure that your whole team understands what do you do when a particular problem arises, especially for your most important aspects of your business. You need to be sure you're contingency planning, and then anticipate those challenges. If you don't anticipate the challenges, you're not going to know what to do when they do happen. So you want to be able to try to make a plan and map out the responses that you would take in anticipation that a problem might occur. I had another employee who we had an issue. We have a biorepository, which means we keep a lot of biological samples in freezers, and our staff grew 20%, 30% over the last few years, and we've hired more people in to help with that. Well, that means more people are getting in and out of those freezers. We're either sending our clients their samples back, or we're putting them back in the freezers. And the manager came to me and said, we're having these alarms, the product's safe, but we are starting to get alarm fatigue, and we don't want our staff to not pay attention. So we're trying to think of remedies. What are some remedies we could do? And in anticipation of more staff growing, we thought, we don't have staff come in on Sunday, and we only have half of our staff come in on Monday. Let's change the shifts. So the next time the problem comes up, we'll already have an answer that we can implement, or that had already been implemented, so that problem is either less or not existent anymore. But it's understanding when and where to do that becomes very important. But then you need to prioritize, and you need to delegate. If the team's well educated on challenges and contingency plans, then they can rapidly respond without specific direction. That's a characteristic of a high-performing team. If teams fail to recognize how to shift to the highest priority, they can't pivot and overcome. So you have to find the highest priority tasks, evaluate the issues, then explain the issues, communicate it well, and communicate what the priority is. What's the priority? Simple, clear, concise. Make sure they understand what we think priority is their organization. Seek input on how to meet that priority. Determine what the solution is, how you're going to act, and then direct the execution of that solution. That'll allow you then to move to the next priority. But if you do that in systematic order, it'll allow you to continue to hit those priorities or challenges that come up, and everybody will know what to do. We're going to talk in a minute about, everybody leading, and everybody leading is a term that is useful if you plan and everybody knows what to do, because that's what has to happen. But if you're clearly and simply talking to your staff and your junior leaders, they should know what to do. And it leads back to the why. Why are we doing something? They have to understand it to be able to do it. They have to understand what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. And then they'll have confidence in actually themselves, and confidence that senior leaders will support them in any decisions they have to make during a time like this. It's very important for them to have support and buy-in. If they don't have support and buy-in, they're not going to have confidence that they can do or carry out the task that you need them to carry out without coming to you and asking. If you had every junior leader coming to you and second guessing or asking that they know what to do, you'll never get through the priority. It's very important that they're well aware and that they understand what to do. So everybody leading is exactly kind of coming into this is not about, it's not about making sure that everybody's allowed to make decisions for the organization. That's not it, because you don't want that. That's chaos, and you'll be herding cats before you know it. So it's not about everybody having responsibility to make those just choices. It's about empowering them with the knowledge of what their job is and how to handle mistakes or situations or high priorities. If they understand that very well and it's clear, then they can go ahead and follow through with a task without actually having to come to you or come to anybody else. So you want to be sure that they're understanding why. And sometimes they might not come to you. Junior leaders might not come to you because they might be afraid. They might be afraid that if you think they don't know what they're doing, that they're not going to be successful, or you're going to think they're incompetent. And you have to have an air of understanding and open door that they can come to you for anything becomes extremely important. You have to be sure that they know why, the junior leaders, so that they can explain it to their staff. You have to make sure that they're executing that with confidence. And again, that they have to know we trust them. They do have to know we trust them. And lastly, I just want to talk about accountability. And this is really about using the tool appropriately. It's not about making sure that you're disciplining. It's not about that. It's really about holding teams accountable to goals. It's making sure that you're giving them what they need in order to be able to do that, that you're mentoring and you're following through with anything that they need in order to be able to do their job well. If a team's not performing and you have to micromanage, we all have to do it time to time. Get in there, figure it out, and get out. But they have to have some independence. The independence and the empowerment is going to be helpful. But if you have to hold someone accountable, again, you want to make sure they're coached and trained. You want to look at if they're in the right position, and are they in the right organization? And again, if you do have to hold someone accountable, do it very quickly. It's not what you preach, it's what you tolerate. And if you're tolerating negativity in your organization, it will become a poison. So you definitely want to hold who you need accountable, when you need to hold them accountable, quickly and effectively. But make sure that they have the tools and they've been given the right opportunity before you're holding them accountable. Because oftentimes, come full circle, you'll see that there was something missing. There was a direction missing. There was a communication missing. There was something missing. Because again, most staff want to do the right thing every single time. So understanding where the downfall happened, how it happened, and then if there is a negative influence or bad apple, that it gets taken care of quickly so that it can't actually spread to the rest. So in summary, extreme ownership. Extreme ownership is no blames, no excuses. Believe in yourself and your team. Leave your ego at the door. Don't bring it in. Be clear and concise. Use accountability the right way. Only micromanage when necessary. What this will give you is in a very enjoyable, positive success in your organization. Thank you for your time.
Hey, my friends, if you enjoyed listening to this podcast, be sure to rate, review, and share your biggest takeaway. And if you're wanting more, you can access hundreds of recent speakers, book summaries, great articles, and more at no additional charge through your membership portal. You can also get involved in a Women Leaders Association mastermind group or a networking group near you. Or if you just need to access your membership portal, simply go to womenleaderspodcast.com to be connected. Because here at Women Leaders Association, we believe we go further, faster, and have more fun when we go together. That's all for today, my friends. Bye for now.